Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back on the dev server and it's time to have a look at the Jeanne d'Arc. This is a new cruiser that is actually coming in for the French naval tech tree. And one of the weird things about the French naval tech tree is you only have 3 machines on the right hand lane, and then on the left you have, well, what, 7? It seems kind of odd. Maybe we could move one of these to over here, or maybe there's going to be something after the Jeanne d'Arc. This means that because right now at least it's at the end of the line, it does have quite high modification costs, so always watch out for that when you're having a look at those types of vehicles. Now, the Jeanne d'Arc is a rank 3 bass rating 4.7 light cruiser. The closest vehicles to it, I would kind of say, is similar to the Italian ones in the way that it's kind of set up, and also at the same time, to me it kind of looks like a cruise liner, which they've just put guns on, weirdly enough. The weaponry that's on the Jeanne d'Arc starts off with 4 dual-mounted 155mm. This is different to a lot of the other guns that the French have access to, and also has some different values. You can see there the first stage fire rate is only 6 rounds a minute, meaning 10-second reload on these guns. The ready use ammo is 30 on each of the guns, so it isn't too bad, but still, going down to 4 rounds a minute is going to be pretty rough for this vehicle. The other thing is it does have quite a lot of ammunition in the bottom, having these 4 large guns, and the armor protection, even though it's a cruiser, is pretty rough. There's 4 single-mounted 75mm that are set around the place as well. You can see them here in these setups. They have kind of weird firing angles, and I'm not entirely sure what they're designed to do. They do seem to be different to the other 75mm we've seen, though, since they have a longer barrel. This is also a 1944 cruiser, so that means it's been refit during the Second World War, and like a lot of French cruisers, they've added some 40mm in the form of 10 of them, and also 18 20mm that have just been sat around the place. You can actually see them all in the center here. So the 75s, the 20s, and then of course the 40s, which are sat over. So just a bunch of AA on this machine since aircraft became very powerful, especially at the start of the war and during it. So to try and survive, a lot of these machines had a lot of guns plonked onto them. The Jeanne d'Arc is exactly the same, which is why you see them all. This vehicle doesn't have access to any torpedoes, so it's just a gun cruiser. It does have a lot of boats on the top of it, though, which is pretty cool. Maybe one day we'll be able to launch some of these and maybe use them, but if not, it's always nice to see them, and when they get hit with HE, they kind of go flying, which is really nice. So, even though this thing's a cruiser, does it actually have a lot of armor? Not really. It has a little bit of armor around the ammo on the main guns, which is quite nice, and then also a little bit around the bridge. So the areas where you have armor, it's very good. You know, that's the areas you do want armor, but with such a small amount, I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference for this vehicle. You basically have very similar amounts of armor compared to even just the 12.7 gun shields. So it's not looking great for the vehicle overall. And since the center of it, there's a lot of dead space in it, I feel like a lot of people are going to shoot the center, not do too much damage to it, and that'll be nice, instead of hitting the ammo, which is, you know, protected by, of course, the extra armor, which will be nice for it. The guns themselves have access to a stock HE shell. These actually have quite a lot of TNT in them, with 6.16 kilos of TNT equivalent, with a pretty decent penetration on the HE as well. Then you have a HE with a base fuse, which has a lot less explosive mass, only 2.9 kilos, but also at the same time does have a decent amount of penetration behind it, so you could maybe hit up the enemies with that. And then also an SAP-BC, which has more TNT equivalent than the HE with the base fuse, and also more penetration. So if you go up against heavy cruisers or even light cruisers, this is probably the round to use. And if you go up against destroyers, well, this 155 will do quite nicely. For the 75s, even though you only have 4 of them, you do get access to the HE, and then the HETF that can help you out, so therefore it means that it does a little bit more damage than against aircraft and other stuff. The other guns, I'm sure, are set up much more for anti-air instead of, you know, going after ships, but at the end of the day, if needs be, needs be. The vehicle has the improved rangefinder, doesn't have a hydroplane or anything like that, pretty bog standard across the way, and no extra mechanics, so no depth charges, no mines, no torpedoes, no nothing. Just guns, and that's basically it. And there's not too much else to it either. So it has a fire director. This one is pretty good, just takes a while to actually direct, but the accuracy is 100%, which is really nice. And then you have another fire director here, which is only 85, but at the same time, it would be fine to do it with. So hopefully it should work pretty well. There is 686 crew on this thing, so there could be more crew, and also the speed isn't the best, but overall I would say it's completely fine. In that regard, like, its survivability will be okay, you know, it won't be the best, but at the same time, this thing is actually at 4.7, so it's going to face a lot of vehicles which are destroyer-based, with rapid-fire guns. The main issue this Jeanne d'Arc has is it's absolutely huge. You can see his secondary armament's doing pretty well. You know, the 75mm, they actually do have a decent fire rate to them compared to other stuff, and also backed up by the great fire rates of the 40mm and the 20s, just makes it a lot easier to use these guns as you go ahead. And that is obviously very useful. Now, the biggest issue that this vehicle is going to have is the reload of the guns, even though the guns hit very hard, especially against destroyers which are around this VR. The issue it'll run into is just if one of the turrets gets taken out or the first stage is done, and that will be a bit of a problem. The muzzle velocity on the guns themselves, though, are pretty good. You can see here with this one that it's literally getting to the target super quickly compared to a lot of other guns that are out there. So aiming shouldn't be as hard compared to, you know, other vehicles. And with the massive amount of, you know, HE and explosive mass that's in these guns, you'll be able to do just a ton of damage around the place, which is super useful to go forward with, right? And that's what you're kind of looking for. So good donks with the guns. I just wish they had a little bit more on the old, a little bit better reload, because there's a lot of vehicles around this BR, especially American ones, that can just hump out damage over and over again, and you're just going to be sat here repairing stuff constantly because you are so big, and it's going to be easy to do damage to you. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Cupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R., and Lafouche for supporting the channel.